don't look 80 years old. You look great.
Thank you. Thank you. I am. I'm well into my 81st year now.
And do you find as the folks kind of refer to in all the publicity as they can draw direct lines from Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger to Tom Paxton in that lineage, is that a heavy cross to bear?
It is kind of. I mean, these you talk about your long ball hitters, Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger just kind of topped the league, if you ask me. I grew up in Oklahoma, just about 24 miles away from Okemah, Woody's hometown, and played high school football against them. I didn't know there was a Woody Guthrie or anything like that until I got down to college.
What was the trigger point? I know you mentioned guys like Burl Ives. I grew up listening to Burl Ives Christmas songs. Was that sort of an impact person in your life?
Yes, it was. I mean, Burl Ives was my first influence, my first purveyor of folk songs. Of course, I didn't hear him that much on the radio or anything, but he'd be in a movie now and then singing The Blue-Tailed Fly. I just loved that stuff. I liked all kinds of music when I was a kid. I liked the really pretty awful pop music of the day, but there was just like a special corner of my heart reserved for when I'd hear what I came to find out were called folk songs. And I just gradually collected them and slowly learned to play a few chords on the guitar so I could sing them. And then I discovered you could get a capo and put it on the neck of the guitar and play the same chords but be in a different key. That was wonderful.
By the way, your hat, your iconic looking hat, where did you get that?
The first one I got in a department store in Stockholm, Sweden in 1968. And I wore it a couple years, lost it, went back to Sweden for another time and got another. I think I bought two and lost them finally. And then I finally found a maker of these hats here in this country. So I have about 6 or 7 of them at home now, so I don't think I'm going to run out of them.
Well, being Swedish, I appreciate the origin of all that.
Well, it kind of fits I'm Swedish on my mother's side, so it kind of fits my Swedish face.
Just out of curiosity, having been born in Chicago, were you a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan?
We were Cubs fans, and we lived in the middle of White Sox territory. So go figure. I have no idea how that happened, but we were Cubs fans.
Do you still follow baseball? Is that?
Oh, I love baseball. Now I'm a Nats fan because I live in the Washington, D.C. area in Virginia, and luckily they're a very good team. They're very entertaining to watch.
Now, guitar was not your instrument of choice when you went to Oklahoma. You had other instruments.
Yeah, well, I played trumpet for 5 years in the high school band in my little town of Bristow. I loved playing the trumpet, but I found that it was difficult to sing and play the trumpet at the same time. So at a church camp, I discovered the ukulele. And from the ukulele, I moved on to the guitar. Very slow progress on that. It wasn't until I came to New York and met some guys who really played that I began to learn a little bit more about how to play it.
Had you always been a writer? Not everybody who plays well writes.
Yeah, that's true. I started writing right away. I wrote my first song while I was in college, and it was terrible. Take my word for that. But I was encouraged, and I wrote a second song, and then one after that, and I kept writing. Dave Van Ronk, in his book, says that I was the first one in the village to be writing my own songs. All of that time, I was singing a very eclectic repertoire of traditional songs, songs from Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger, and just whenever I'd hear a song that I liked, the cowboy song. And it was only gradually that I inserted my own songs into my programs until it was about 9 years in before my shows were only my own songs.
As your own songs, you, as is the history of folk singers, not only took short, wonderful songs and then had social verbiage to it, you know, something easy that people can pick up on. Did you find that was part of your genre as well?
Well, it's as old as folk music itself. People have always made up songs to express their political opinions. It's not just latter day. I mean, we had hundreds of songs about during our colonial period about the wicked English government and the taxes they were putting on us, and all of that came out in the song. So this is a very old tradition.
I am the founder of the Robert Jackson Center. Justice Robert Jackson was involved with Brown versus Board of Education.
Nuremberg
trial, exactly. And I couldn't help but read your bio and find that one of the things that you have written about and sung about are things related to that. For example, A Train for Auschwitz is about the Holocaust. On the Road to Srebrenica is about the Bosnian Muslims who were killed in a 95 massacre in Bosnia and Herzegovina, all of which relate to the Nuremberg trial and justice and rule of law. What is it that kind of captured your attention on those social issues?
I hate bullies, whether they be schoolyard or national. I hate Nazis to the bottom of my soul. What they did was totally unforgivable. So naturally, I would write songs about that. All the while that I'm writing songs about the issues of our day right now, I'm also writing children's songs. I'm also writing goofy songs. I never let an idea die because I think it might be an unfashionable song. If it feels right to me, I'll do my best by it and try to write it as well as I can.
You were 27 years old. You'd signed with Elektra Records in 1964, but then took some time off to go to Mississippi as part of the Freedom.
No, I didn't make it.
Didn't make it?
I didn't make it. You're talking about 64.
Yeah.
We had a family tragedy. I had a sister-in-law who was murdered. Nothing relating to civil rights or anything like that, but I couldn't put the family through the tension of me being down there while they're mourning her, so I didn't make it. I did other civil rights concerts and work, but not that.
The Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney about the murder of the three civil rights activists. Ironically, we had a couple years ago the chief prosecutor of that trial, John Doerr, was here. So this,
wow.
Some of the things you've done and written about Bo, John, and things like that relate to what we're doing.
Yes. Well, I tell people who ask me about writing songs, what kind of songs to write, and I say, well, we all have our own songs, but for me, a great inspiration is to read the papers every day, watch the news, so long as it's not a certain news. And then when you find a story that moves you in any way, sometimes to hilarity, more often to sorrow or anger, then to write a song with yourself as either an imagined participant in that story or an eyewitness. And this is what Woody used to do. He wasn't actually in Ludlow, Colorado when that National Guard massacre took place, but he wrote as if he were. And that's a very legitimate point of view, and I do that a lot. Shakespeare in Hamlet is talking to the players, and he said, hold the mirror up to nature.
Yeah.
and that has a wonderful benefit of putting us in the middle of the life around us that we're all living. And that was the approach that I used when I wrote a song about the 343 firemen who died on 9/11. I wrote from the point of view of a survivor of the tower who was helped out of the tower by firemen. And I wasn't there, but I had a fellow come up to me after a show once when I had sung that song. He said, "I was in the North Tower and you got it right." That's, that did a lot for me.
Do you find that, gosh, you are one of the great troubadours. I mean, think about, and I'm sure you just keep moving along here, that today, when people ask you about the 60s, do you mind reflecting back on that, or are you just looking?
I don't mind at all. I can't think that there's anything new I have to say about it, but it was an exciting time. It was a great time and place to be young. To be just starting out on this journey then was the greatest good fortune I could have hoped for.
I'm sure at one point you are being acoustic guitar player, singer, songwriter, and then all of a sudden one of your colleagues decides to put some electricity into it.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Well, initially I was opposed. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, he was playing like that before he started playing acoustically. And he has a background in that. And it was actually quite a natural progression for him. For me, it would have been rank careerism. It would have been anything but genuine. If I had said, well, this looks like it's going to be the coming thing, I better hook onto this while I can, I think I would have made a dreadful rock singer. So, but I think Bob did the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that happened, it was also the wave of the folk rock and all of a sudden the rock. Did you feel a little bit like a second-class citizen during that time period?
No, because you'd see, John Lennon playing an acoustic guitar. Nobody was saying acoustic guitars aren't cool anymore. They were just saying, let's play everything. And I was saying, I think I'll just stay with this, thanks very much, but you go ahead. I still feel that way.
So back in the Village, we're talking about Peter, Paul, and Mary spent a lot of time at Chautauqua Institution, which was here. You spent some time, you roomed with one of them.
Yeah, Noel and Paul and I were roommates. He had an apartment over in the East Village, and he made room for me. And so we shared that apartment for quite a while. At that point, he was starting to travel a great deal with Peter, Paul, and Mary, so a lot of the time I had it to myself. We were all great friends. I mean, he and Peter would keep me awake working on the guitar parts that they were doing because they were very meticulous about their arrangements. And then we'd go down to Chinatown and make fools of ourselves over food.
Did you guys, during that time period, I mean, with Bob Dylan and Peter, Paul, and Mary, among others, did you I'm visualizing sitting around a table and you're bouncing ideas off each other. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. Also, bouncing songs off each other. We were sitting around, next to the Gaslight was a bar called the Kettle of Fish, and we were there a lot. And one night, several of us were around the table. Dylan was on my right, Van Ronk, Phil Oakes, and Patrick Sky, and we were all, and Bob Lee said, what do you think of this? And into my ear, he sang me a song he had just written, which turned out to be Gates of Eden. He said, what do you think? I said, I think it's great. And it is, it's a great song. And Another time we were sitting in the bar next to the bitter end, and he said, this is about 1970, he said, you know that song of yours that Annie's gonna sing her song? He said, I like that song. He said, I think I'm gonna cut that song. And about 4 years ago we did. It's a good thing I wasn't waiting for it to happen. Yeah. It took him about 40 years to do it, but he did it.
I remember so distinctly your song, Bottle of Wine, Fruit of the Vine, When You're Gonna Let Me Get Sober. What's the impetus behind that?
Well, the impetus of the melody, which I had first, which is unusual for me, was having played with John Hurt, or on the same bill with John Hurt, for a couple of weeks. He played at the Gaslight with us kids. And we heard him 3 or 4 times a night, and he had that wonderful kind of a syncopated, ragtimey sort of guitar. And very soon after that ended, I found that when I was getting the guitar out of the case, I was playing this little thing, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. It sounded kind of like John Hurt's kind of thing, but it was really my tune, but I don't think I would have written that tune without having heard him. And all the way across the country, finally we got out, my new wife and I got out to California, and I said, Midge, I'm going to have to make up some words or go crazy. So I sat down and wrote the words in about 20 minutes. It was very, very fast. It just came out so easily. Bottle of wine, fruit of the vine. When are you going to let me get sober? And now, you know, the song is sung all over France. There's a wonderful French translation. Go, Jolie bouteille, sacre bouteille, vous te me laisse tranquille, je vous te quitte, je vous m'en allais, je vous recommence ma vie. When I want my back, you know, when am I going to get my life back? You know, yeah.
So when you hear, you wrote so many songs that have been covered by so many. How do you feel about that? I mean, you write them, you've actually sung them, but then you get the Jimmy Gilmores and the Fireballs and many of these noted songwriters cover your songs. Is that a feeling of elation or?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. My God, yeah. It's for one thing, it's such a compliment that someone likes your song well enough to sing it and put it on their recording. It's a big compliment. So, and if it's a hit, you know, you can make some serious money from something like that. So that, right from the beginning, I was getting recordings, which was just enormous luck. I met a man named Milt Oken, who became my publisher, and I stayed with him for 50 years, 50 years. And he was producing Peter, Paul and Mary, the Chad Mitchell Trio, John Denver, and a great many other artists. And he would take my songs and give them to them to record. So I was getting recordings right from the beginning. And it was one thing that convinced me I was going to be able to make a go of it.
And many that came into the kind of the popular catalog. What's the 1 or 2 songs that have made you, let's do this, I'm a lawyer. What's the 1 or 2 songs that's made you the biggest royalty checks?
The Last Thing on My Mind, The Marvelous Toy, Going to the Zoo, Ramblin' Boy. Wasn't That a Party? It was a big hit for a group called the Fireballs. No, not the Fireballs, the Irish Rovers.
Yeah. Fantastic. I've taken more than enough time, Tom, but I'm so thrilled that you're here.
Thank you.
Jamestown, New York, and Rolling Hills Radio.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your 80th, the Grammy, and everything.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.